Yeah, and we've talked a lot on this podcast about losing your sense of smell. And I know that you work with the Monell Center not only with smell, but with the chemical senses, so also with taste.
Mhm.
And so, what happens when someone loses their sense of taste or their gustatory sense, or they have dysfunction of that? How does it impact taste and flavor?
It's actually pretty devastating. I mean, if you can imagine putting something in your mouth that is, the consistency of cardboard and has no sweet, sour, salty, bitter, no sensation whatsoever, it really diminishes one's appetite and one's willingness to consume food or beverages. If you couple that with a loss of smell, which is where we get most of the flavor dimension of food, this is devastating for people. Something that was once a pleasurable experience, or at the very least, a survival way of experiencing the world. These senses work together and can help one another by augmenting. If you lose a little bit of your sense of smell, not completely, you can do things with your sense of taste, or even the sense of what we call chemesthesis, which is our ability to taste the hotness of chili peppers or the cooling of menthol, for example. And there's a lot that can be done with texture to try to augment the sensory systems when one of them goes a little by wayside. But generally, it can be a very life altering experience when any of these sensory systems start to decline.
And is it usually coupled together? Like when you lose your sense of smell, you also lose your taste? Or is it not connected in that way that you can keep one and not the other?
Absolutely, you can. And to be clear, it is much more likely that you will lose your sense of smell than taste, even though, fortunately, until COVID, that was a pretty rare event for most people. But loss of taste usually comes about because of medical problems that people are having, treatments, either like radiation or chemotherapy, or even drugs that they're taking, where their taste is altered so that things were pleasurable before now are not so much. But you can lose both of them together. You can lose one or you can lose the other. And all of that all of that sequela will necessarily alter the way you approach food and beverages and everyday life.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with COVID, we've been talking a lot about losing your sense of smell, but not so much. Well, people think they're losing their sense of taste, actually, but we know that it's smell. But not, we haven't talked much about losing this your sense of taste on the podcast. So I wanted to see like
Mhm.
what's the difference. So that's very interesting. And what did you call the sense with the trigeminal nerve?
Chemesthesis. It's the scientific term for activating the trigeminal nerve through either the something we put in our mouth, something we put in our nose. Obviously with chili peppers, if you rub your eye, you'll feel it there too, and you'll start to tear up. But in the oral cavity, and sometimes even in the nasal cavity, it's a pleasurable sensation. I mean, I really like things that have spice from peppers. I like things that have cooling sometimes, from any of the mint or menthol compounds that we put in food. And so having that third sensory system that is so integral to the way we experience food and beverages can help when one of the other sensory systems starts to decline.
Great.